Audiobook excerpt from You're Welcome by Dave O'Connell, read by the author. Korean DMZ, 1968. DMZ arrival.
Life was about to become very different for the 2nd 31st. 8th Army had instituted a program of rotating one battalion from the 7th Division up to the DMZ every 5 or 6 months. We were the first. Until then, it had been exclusively the 2nd Division's territory. The problem was that our entire inexperienced battalion was plopped into place, while the veterans left with little more advice than, "Good luck, you'll need it." Our inexperience would become obvious in the first few weeks. When the Army declared the DMZ a hostile fire zone in April, they defined it as the area north of the Imjim River and south of the demarcation line, about 3 miles wide on average. Even in that small space, there were degrees of danger. We were based in Camp Mata, about 2 miles from the fence, and maintained perimeter security with bunkers and concertina wire. We had a few perimeter incidents that succeeded in sustaining a low level of anxiety in us. We were separated from the DMZ fence by a low range of hills. Popular belief among the troops was that the 2 bridges crossing the river behind us would be blown up in an invasion by North Korea, and we would be abandoned. This was a lot different than Camp Casey, but how dangerous could it be with a recreation center and donut dollies? Dangerous enough for the Army to start giving us combat pay. The danger was greater along the chain-link fence, which had just been installed with the usual harumphs that generals must be taught at West Point. They were fond of calling it freedom's frontier. It certainly defined the Asian edge of the American empire and the siege line we had established around China and Russia after World War II. A see-through Hadrian's Wall, across which North Koreans waged steady skirmishes and psychological warfare. It was bad enough to be freezing in a foxhole a few yards from the fence, but to hear your name coming from North Korean speakers with details of a recent letter from your girlfriend was bone-chilling. Now you knew you had people behind you working for the other side. The greatest danger was beyond the fence, inside the DMZ itself. Patrolling was part of the armistice. If we did not patrol, the North Koreans would have fortified the whole place. As it was, they laid mines and set ambushes for our patrols. We took most of our casualties inside the fence. All this was too much for a few, and before the end of the first week, we had our first toe shooting incident. A man pressed his M14 to his combat boot and pulled the trigger, trying to shoot off just enough of his big toe to get himself taken off the line. The first one got away with it. The Army could not prove it wasn't an accident. The second one, a few days later, got the officers edgy. When a third man tried it about a week after that, they threw the book at him, and that ended the outbreak. A few nights after we arrived, North Korean infiltrators were spotted on a large, grassy mudflat in the middle of a bend in the Imjim River. This meant that they had already gotten past the fence, but the real fun started when our heavy mortar squad went into action for the first time. The plan was to fire illumination rounds over the island, to allow forward observers to pinpoint the infiltrators' location, and then to direct live mortar rounds to the site. I was at the recreation compound, almost a mile from the island, standing in line to see a movie. Suddenly we were lit up like daylight. We looked up to see illumination rounds directly over our heads. Somebody in the line said, "Let's hope they don't start firing the live stuff," but nobody got out of the line. Lucky for us, the attack was called off. The infiltrators headed south to do their mischief, and we got to see the movie. The next day, an old sergeant looked at the abandoned rice paddy across the road from Camp Mata's front gate. It hadn't been tended since the war and was dry and covered in thigh-high, brown, dormant rice plants. He decided that the plants could provide cover to North Koreans and had to be removed. Since a light breeze was blowing away from the camp, he would burn it. The communications platoon protested. The day before, 2 of them had put a cable reel on a stick and run a telephone line across that field to a forward outpost. The fire would burn the wire, and it would have to be replaced. Nevertheless, a fire line was started at the near end of the paddy, and the breeze moved it away from us, leaving blackened earth behind. It wasn't long before the first mine exploded, then another and another. The signalmen watched in horror as the paddy they had walked through the previous day exploded steadily for half an hour. They had been saved by the frozen ground and fuses that had been rusting for 15 years since the war. During our stretch on the DMZ, we had 3 minefield incidents, all of them American mines. Fortunately, nobody was injured.